Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, GMC. Woohoo! Good morning. Good morning. Happy Friday to everyone. This morning we have the public speaking class final exam presentation. We're going to orate 2020. 2020 orated. Woohoo! I know that applause is for the fact that we're all glad it's gone and behind us, right? Woohoo! So I have my students here today to present. This counts as their final exam. So if you are here watching, we appreciate your support and we appreciate you showing them, you know, that you do support them and everything. So pay close attention. They have had long weeks of study and learning the antics of public speaking, and that it's more of an art than it is a skill. So I'm encouraging them to relax and engage with you as we go. All right, without me belaboring, because I am a minister, I could stand up here and I could talk on and on for a while, but we won't do that. So I have Andy Nichols from Group 1. They're going to present the hidden gems of 2020. They have some visuals in their presentation, the hidden gems, and that is a hidden message in those hidden gems. So Andy is going to take us away. I appreciate you again for coming in to support us. And after Andy's group, Group 2 will come up. All right, Andy, take it away.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Andy Nichols, and today I'm going to be talking about the hidden gems of 2020. Now, how would you describe 2020? Despicable, disgraceful, unprecedentedly horrendous are probably some words that are coming to mind right now.
I like it.
Yeah. And that would be a fair assessment. After all, there was a stock market crash. There were bushfires in Australia, forest fires in the Amazon rainforest. There was a major explosion in Lebanon, which killed hundreds. We tragically lost a number of icons like Kobe Bryant, Chadwick Boseman, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And of course, the coronavirus pandemic, which closed businesses, left millions out of work, and took the lives of over 2 million people worldwide. I could go on, as the list is seemingly infinite, but what good does it do to sit and mull over all the terrible things that happened in the past year? As hard as it is to be optimistic about the past, as well as the future, it will be beneficial if we can try. Now, 2020 was not all bad. We witnessed the largest voting initiative in American history. We twice developed a vaccine in under 12 months, something which has never been done before. We made several advancements in science and space exploration. And we all came together to fight the pandemic by social distancing, washing our hands, and wearing masks. Today, we are going to highlight some of these positive events that took place in 2020, as well as some of the heroes that brought us out of disaster and gave us hope for a brighter future. And now Dimitri will highlight some of the main events of 2020.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, my name is Dimitri Akaris, and to everyone who's joined us, welcome. Now, I'm sure like many of us, we all like to start off the new year on a high note and a positive outlook. And going into 2020 was no different, since after all, it was the century mark from the Roaring 20s, where the economy was prosperous and life was full of excitement. But, did you know that they also faced a pandemic in 1918? According to the CDC, which is also known as the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, had estimated that over 50 million, the Spanish flu had killed over 50 million worldwide, including 675,000 Americans. Most of them were between ages of 15 to 34. Now, penicillin was not developed until 1924, which is about 5 to 6 years afterwards. Now, despite this, America still persevered and thrived. With the limited resources that they had during those times, surely we can thrive and persevere too. As you can see, our COVID cases have been dropping and dropping steadily, and they will continue to do so the more people we get vaccinated. But despite going through this pandemic, that didn't slow us as we learn to adjust and be comfortable to the new norm. However, that didn't hide a major problem that we're still facing today, which is systemic racism. Although many minorities are well aware of these inhumane behaviors, most of us could not understand or comprehend what they're really going through until we saw videos such as George Floyd, who was struck to death by a police officer after saying he could not breathe. Ahmaud Arbery, who was just going on his daily jog and was actually hunted by someone who was a police officer, not on his duty, along with his son and another neighbor. Rashad Brooks, who was in a Wendy's drive-thru, unarmed, and detained by the police when they had lost control and shot him. And then when you feel they can't even feel safe outside in the streets, Breonna Taylor was shot in her own apartment without any kind of warrant. Enough became enough, and we called for justice. Although the protests were not always peaceful, America showed that we will not tolerate with this social and racial injustice, and we will continue to fight, no matter what skin color you have, to be treated with the same amount of respect that we all would want for ourselves. And, as if things couldn't have felt any more different, it did. In the afternoon of March 11th, 2020, Ivy League became the first to cancel the remainder of their spring season. The following evening, the NBA suspended the rest of their season. The next day, other conferences and leagues have followed. Major sporting events such as March Madness have been canceled, whereas other sporting global events such as the Olympics and the UEFA European Championship from soccer have been postponed and hopefully will be played in the summer. Now, the one sport that did not cancel in the U.S. was the UFC. Now, they actually went far and beyond to ensure that none of their employees would contract from the virus, and they did an exceptional job in doing so. Now, for several months when sports was on a standstill, politics was not. See, we witnessed the impeachment process of former President Donald J. Trump, who was ultimately acquitted by the Senate. We've also witnessed, as Andrew iterated earlier, a record turnout in our voting, with over 159 million votes. And, next slide please. We've also witnessed a storm that can be created when the president refuses to accept the results of an election. Although he lost the election, Trump did leave his mark in 2020 through the decisions he's made on a global scale. In January 3rd of last year, he's ordered a drone strike killing Iranian's top general, Qasem Soleimani, who's thought to be the second most powerful man behind their supreme leader, who's been ruling for the past 32 years. In February, later that month, the office of Trump's administration and the leaders of the Taliban, a known Muslim fundamentalist group, had reached an agreement marking the first steps in ending the Afghan war that has been lasting for almost 2 decades. Under the deal, all U.S. forces will be withdrawn by this May, provided that the Taliban will negotiate peace with the Afghan government. In December of last year, the U.S. Department of Defense had announced that they will withdraw 2,500 troops from Afghanistan and Iraq by mid-January of this year. Not only has there been major events that have been happening between the U.S. and the Middle East, Europe has also experienced some major changes, since Britain has officially withdrawn from the European Union after being a member for 47 years. And if there's one thing we could take away from last year, it would to appreciate each other's presence. Because there is nothing better than having you be here and being part of the community. Nothing reminds us that more when we mourn for a lost one. And there have been so many popular role models that we have known that passed away this year, such as musical rock stars as Eddie Van Halen and Little Richard, TV legend who's mostly known as Jeopardy's host Alex Trebek, film legends such as Sean Connery, mostly known from James Bond, and Olivia de Havilland from Gone with the Wind, and from what most of us are really familiar with, Chadwick Boseman, who was mostly known from Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. We also mourn two athletes who raised the standard of excellence, and FIFA World Cup winner Diego Maradona, and five-time NBA champ, two-time Olympic champ, and Oscar winner Kobe Bryant. And lastly, we've lost two icons who have fought out of their own way through repressiveness to invoke a change for equality, and had worked tirelessly for their whole lives to create a better world for minorities and for women, John Lewis and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Not everything in 2020 has been a setback. Andrew will now share with you the scientific advancements from last year.
Thanks, Dimitri. Despite all the hardships faced by everyone in 2020, we were still able to come out of the year having made many significant advancements in science, medicine, and space exploration. And firstly, 2 coronavirus vaccines were developed within 12 months. This has never been done before, as the previous record was the mumps vaccine, which took 4 years. They were developed with incredible efficiency, and both have been proven to be around 95% effective. These are a new type of vaccine which has never been used before. They use what is called messenger RNA to give our cells instructions to how to make a certain kind of protein, which triggers an immune response, thus fighting the infection of COVID-19. The vaccine distribution has been swift and efficient, with over 75 million doses already administered in the United States, and over 1.8 million doses more being given per day. Many are beginning to believe that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, that is the coronavirus pandemic. Now, NASA, SpaceX, and among others, have made very exciting breakthroughs in space exploration this past year. The European Space Agency and NASA launched a satellite that is currently orbiting the Sun and getting a closer view than ever before. The orbiter has since released numerous photos of our Sun, which show it in detail like we've never seen. It is also helping scientists to answer questions about the Sun that we previously were not able to answer. NASA also launched its Perseverance rover, which has now landed on the surface of Mars and is currently searching for signs of past life. The rover also has the capability to produce oxygen from the carbon dioxide in Mars' atmosphere, in a similar way to a tree on Earth. This is an important step in our journey to inhabit the planet. Perseverance is now the 9th successful landing on Mars from the United States. 2020 was also a big year for SpaceX, as they launched 26 missions, beating their previous record of 21. They have now launched over 950 Starlink satellites, and they've also launched the first commercial space flight. Now, back here on Earth, scientists from the United States and the United Kingdom have developed enzymes that can break down plastic for reuse. Humans produce around 300 million tons of plastic each year. This new technology could help to handle the demand of recycling this material. The method produces plastic which is just as strong as conventional plastics that we see today, and these enzymes work up to 6 times faster than previous ones. They're also able to revert 90% of the original plastic to its original materials. This is a massive improvement on the current rate, which is around 30%. A method that is this efficient could prove to be very effective in managing the amount of waste on Earth. Now, 2020 also saw many breakthroughs in medicine. It has been called the Year of the Genetic Code by Olivier Elemento, director of the Englander Institute for Precision Medicine in New York. A new form of gene editing called prime editing has been developed in 2020 and allows us to cut out pieces of DNA, edit them, and return them to their regular functions. This has many implications for the treatment of genetic diseases like sickle cell disease. The field of medicine has also adopted something called telemedicine, which involves patients seeing their doctor over Zoom calls and other similar programs. Doctors were seeing patients at a higher rate than ever last year, despite not being able to see them in person. This will likely have an influence on the way medical treatment is handled in the future. A new blood test has also been produced, which can detect and diagnose Alzheimer's disease. This is a progressive form of dementia, which affects millions of Americans every year and has been notoriously difficult to detect as well as treat. The test is still in trial phase, but is largely promising. Now, these are only a fraction of the things that we accomplished in 2020, but as you can see from this small sample, the field of science refused to be held back by economic hardships and even a pandemic. These breakthroughs in science and medicine have given us something positive to take away from 2020, as well as some exciting prospects for the years to come. Now, Anna will elaborate on some of the valuable lessons of this past year.
Thanks, Andy. Because of the scientific advancements and events that have occurred over the span of the past year, we can look at 2020 in a whole new light. Obviously, 2020 was still a pretty tragic year, but thousands of people died, thousands lost their jobs, and thousands suffered from illness across the globe. But at the same time, last year is not as bad as we made it out to be. In reality, 2020 taught us many valuable lessons. As you may remember, around this time a year ago, everything began to shut down. I don't know about you, but during that nationwide lockdown, I had to learn how to adapt to changes that were going on around me. Through those changes, I began to see what a blessing in disguise 2020 really was. Now, I have a couple of questions for y'all. Do we have any Lion King fans here? Okay, yeah, so you've seen the Lion King movie. You know there's the scene in the movie where Rafiki the baboon talks to Simba the lion. And he says, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either run from it or you can learn from it. Who knew that a story from an animated movie made in 1994, might I add, could be so applicable to our lives today? Now, who's heard this quote before? Every pain gives a lesson, and every lesson changes a person. I heard this for the first time recently, but I thought it seemed fitting to share now. There sure was a lot of pain that came along with 2020, but this year we can choose to either run from it or we can choose to learn from it. For example, in 2020, we learned the importance of rest and taking the time to slow down. Oftentimes, people in this world, me included, can become so busy that we get caught up in the things that shouldn't be our number one priority. And sometimes these things can even become our main focus. With so much new information being thrown at us and stress about the future on our minds, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. That extra time that we were given in 2020 allowed us a moment to pause, breathe, and reevaluate the priorities and what's most important in our lives. 2020 gave us the opportunity to spend more quality time with spouses, kids, and family all together. It gave more opportunities to try new hobbies, work on things around the house, and eat more healthy home-cooked meals. It gave us the time to enjoy the outdoors and the beautiful creation God has shared with us, and time to work on our mental health and physical health as well. 2020 taught us to not take for granted what we have, such as our jobs, our money, fresh food, good health, traveling, and even time spent with friends. In addition to rest and slowing down, the past year has also taught us the importance of patience. When we're stuck in the same place for who knows how long, tired of doing the same old thing, and you're unable to go safely out into the public, you have to be able to practice patience. I know that patience is something I need to work on, but I also think patience plays a crucial role in being at peace. And if you're anything like me, thinking about peace in the future, peace in our country, and just having a general peace of mind is something that I thought about a lot last year. Along with the importance of rest and peace, 2020 has taught us that there are hidden heroes all around us. Whether it be the Amazon employee that delivered your packages from all that online shopping from quarantine, or maybe the neighbor who has socially distanced conversations with you at the end of the driveway every week. or the teachers who are doing all that they can to make it possible to learn safely inside the classroom, as well as just as effectively outside of the classroom. There's also the frontline workers and the doctors and nurses who care for the sick and who are in need right now. 2020 has helped us come to realize that heroes really are all around us. I think that 2020 has even given us a new definition of heroes and a new appreciation for those that help us out, whether the act is big or small. I think that we can take these few lessons just mentioned and the many others that we've learned from 2020 and apply them to our situations here in 2021. When the clock struck midnight on December 31st, it's evident that everything didn't just change back to normal. And in fact, I don't think that things are going to change back to exactly the way they were, or at least in the way we hope for them to. Even now, in the third month of 2021, many changes, both positive and negative, have already been made. In order to have a good year, despite any difficult or unexpected circumstances that might come of 2020, we can reflect on the past 12 or so months and hold on to those valuable lessons that 2020 has taught us. Think of the ways 2020 was a blessing instead of a curse, and remember those positive thoughts as we make our way further into the year of 2021. In conclusion, 2020 was a year to remember, for the bad things that happened, but also for the good. And yes, good things did come from 2020. After discussing the life-changing events, scientific achievements, and valuable lessons, we're able to see the hidden gems of 2020, despite the negative things that went on around us. While many unbelievable and terrible events did happen, one after another it seemed like, we can't forget the incredible events that changed history for the better. We may not be able to determine the effects that those events have on our future in the long run, but we can hope for the best as change takes place. 2020 itself was a year of change. So, change the way you think about 2020. Have you reconsidered how you would describe the past year? As we carry the memories of 2020 with us, think of the good events, the achievements, and the positive things that came from it, and use that to make the most of your 2021. Thank you.
Any questions?
It was really encouraging. It was really well done.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you.
You're all good speakers, too.
Absolutely. Great job.
How did Ellen?
What was your favorite part of 2020?
You know, I really don't remember any of it, to be honest. I don't know. It was nice to be at home with everyone for like the first month or two, but it got old after a while. So I'd say like that first week or two when everything was kind of just really slowed down. That was kind of nice in hindsight. You know, and I wish it would have ended there, but what can you do? So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And now group 2 will they will give their presentation on the long spring break.
Good morning. My name is Jenna Thomas, and my group and I will be sharing with you the journey that was the long spring break of 2020. Ella will come up here and begin our speech with the beginning of the year.
Good morning. When we all yelled, Happy New Year, on January 1st of 2020, we never expected the tragedy this year was going to hold. This year was full of death, hatred, isolation, and terror. The first month of 2020 was a foreshadowing of what this year was going to come forth. January 21st, the CDC confirms the very first coronavirus case in Washington, D.C. The same day, a Chinese scientist confirms human transmission is the way that the virus can be spread. This is what introduced masks as a necessity to living a semi-normal life. and trying not to contract the virus. On January 31st, the World Health Organization declares that the virus is a global health emergency. February 2nd, global air travel is restricted. So any plans of going to Greece, Spain, Italy, or any other exciting places were deferred. This virus is something no one expected to grow as rapidly as it really did. My parents went on a cruise ship from March 1st to March 5th. The day they came back, the passengers on the California cruise ship tested positive and were stuck for 14 days. This was a very terrifying time in the United States because we did not know how long to quarantine for. An important event that happened is March 11th, when the CDC confirms the virus is a pandemic. Students got out on spring break, March 14th, and then quarantine began. And thus, the longest spring break begins. Within the world of sports, from March 6th to March 13th, the effects of COVID similarly moved from an ominous but isolated curiosity to a full-blown crisis. In a dizzying 24-hour span, from Wednesday night to Thursday night, the NBA, the ATP Tour, Major League Soccer, the NHL, the MLBs, and the PGA Tour suspended, delayed, or even outright canceled the remainder of their seasons. On Friday morning, the Masters and the Boston Marathon were postponed as well, according to ESPN. Another major event that happened in the world is that the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo were postponed to 2021. Also, a big part of the American culture is college football. College football spring training was canceled. Everyone is always so excited to create their March Madness brackets. I know I always make one, and I get it so wrong every time. But this year, the NCAA basketball tournament was canceled. And for the first time ever, the Little League World Series was canceled too, which was very sad because our team from Peachtree City went last year, and they played really well. One of the biggest events from this past year was the death of the legend Kobe Bryant. On January 26th of 2020, Kobe and his daughter Gianna passed away due to a helicopter crash. This left a permanent hole in the basketball world, even though the helicopter crashed on the hillside of Calabasas, California. It was immediately felt around the world. The high costs of COVID-19 are evident in lost jobs, dramatic falls in GDP, compromised schooling, and bankrupt restaurants. Some of these losses will be recovered over time, but some will not. The human cost of the pandemic, above and beyond the gruesome death toll, are much more difficult to assess. Low-income households report more negative emotions than did high-income ones, including more worry, sadness, loneliness, and anger. There is evidence of spillover effects from COVID-19 among populations already vulnerable to deaths of despair. While most of these populations tend to be rural and less likely to have high COVID cases like bigger cities, the economic cost and the uncertainty associated with the pandemic still affect them. The suicides in rural areas, meanwhile, have spiked significantly in the fall of 2020. In March through July of 2020, compared to the same period, 2019 and 2018, there was a sharp increase in calls activated by drug overdoses and deaths, mental and behavioral issues, and in refusals to go to the hospital by overdose victims. Jalper and Colum reported the highest rate of suicides at 40 to 45%, respectively, about 4 times higher than the national average rate. This pandemic has brought out more mental illnesses and suicides due to isolation and a feeling of hopelessness. The biggest thing that we have learned from this pandemic is how important human interaction is. The most important way that you can help our society with the rise of suicides is by checking in on your friends and making sure that even though we can't see them in person, to call or text them every day. Now Jenna is going to take us through the middle months of 2020 and how it affected seniors in the class of 2020 and began racial inequality.
The middle of 2020 was filled with both isolation, but it was also filled with movement. Starting in May, the graduating class of 2020 was missing a very viable part of their school year, their graduation. Many graduates missed out on a number of things all around the world. In the US alone, they missed out on their senior prom, their normal end-of-the-year activities, and even their own graduation ceremony. In Fayette County, I know that their graduation ceremony wasn't held until December of 2020, which was 7 months after the end of their high school careers. The class of 2020 did get some sort of consolation. YouTube held a live stream called Dear Class of 2020 in honor of the graduates. This live stream was meant to give them some sense of hope for the future. It had speakers and performances from celebrities like Beyonce, Emma Chamberlain, Lady Gaga, BTS, and even Michelle and Barack Obama. The live stream ended up lasting 4 hours. Even though high school graduates did suffer a lot, college graduates also suffered. Time magazine says in their article how COVID-19 will shape the class of 2020 for the rest of their lives, that instead of graduating into their future lives, many class of 2020 seniors feel like they've gone backwards. Due to lack of employment and the pandemic itself keeping them at home instead of living their lives, the new citizens of society have been forced to take a step back in their lives. It's almost as if they're back in high school again. In a time where they should be independent and going out into the world and living their lives alone, they're having to be home and being dependent on their parents again. Heading into the summer, unity occurred through the inequality experienced within our country. After the wrongful murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, our country went into a full-out equality movement called the Black Lives Matter movement. The name that the movement stemmed from was an activist group formed in the early 2010s that formed due to other injustice towards the Black community. The movement grew in the summer of 2020 because of the blatant portrayal of racist injustice poured into the Black community and other minority communities within the US. This movement brought together people of all ages and races to protect and fight for equality of all people in our country, no matter the color of their skin. The New York Times says that there was around 140 demonstrations per day across the US, and that the turnout ranged from dozens to tens of thousands in around 2,500 small towns and large cities. Even though my family was not directly affected, my city was. Fayette County had multiple protests during the summer in honor of the movement. One night I was working at the cookie store that I work at, and I was able to serve some of these protesters after the protest happened. They looked so happy and proud because they were able to fight for what they believed in, and they were able to fight for what was right. The movement made huge history in the US and even around the world. And hopefully it will be the beginning of the end of the racial prejudice within our country. By the end of the summer, the riots began to decrease a little bit, but the presidential race began. The presidential race was between Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Joe Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris were seen to win by the general public because of the lack of appeal that Trump had due to the events of 2020. Young people and celebrities heavily promoted voting due to Trump's lack of action. They promoted Biden due to the promise of a better, more equal future. The beginning of the race created unity, but it also started to create division again once in our country. This was due mostly to political parties. There was unity within the parties themselves, but then but then the parties divided themselves from each other. The U.S. became seen as red and blue instead of red, white, and blue. Even though it was only the beginning, it was also a turn for hope, as many of our citizens hoped for change and expected to get it one way or another. Now, Adams is going to conclude our speech with how the year ended and that hope for the future.
Thanks, Ella and Jenna. Wrapping up the unforgettable year of 2020's emotional events will forever play in our hearts and minds. The long spring break included twists and turns, trials and tribulations, and jaw-dropping moments that will make history in our history books to come. The emotional roller coaster at the end of 2020 played out like a movie that no one has ever seen before. Tyler Perry and Steven Spielberg has nothing on the movie we call 2020's life experience. Now let us take a look specifically at the months of August to December. August is usually the month that everyone goes back to school and everyone's excited about their new uniforms and new dresses that they have for the first day of school. Well, this was a little different. Because of the pandemic and policies, procedures had to change. The confusion of mandated virtual schools increased anxiety for teachers and parents, and also students. See, the parents became the teachers, and the students, well, they remained students, but the homes became the classrooms. The best part about this is parents found a new level of respect for the classroom teachers. I remember speaking with a friend of mine that had twin girls, and they were in 3rd grade. Her girls learned differently from each other. One got easily distracted and needed some structure and needed hands-on techniques, and the other one was, they learned a little bit more with a relaxed environment and excelled with motivation. She had to adjust to the environment and make 2 different classrooms in her home. I remember her calling me, venting about how stressful this moment was for her and how she just had to be strong for the girls. Something else happened that shocked us in August. Well, you know, our Black Panther died. Yes, of course, Mr. Chadwick Boseman. He was 43 and had a private diagnosis of colon cancer. We remember sitting in the movie theater watching Wakanda Forever, of course, Black Panther. In September, the 2nd ever appointed High Court died at the age of 87. Supreme Court Justice Miss Ruth Ginsburg was a trailblazer and fought for gender equality. Remembering her gave all women new aspirations to dream big and succeed with absolutely no glass ceilings. In October was particularly interesting because our president and first lady at the time tested positive for COVID-19. Interesting because Trump said COVID-19 was a hoax. But soon after he said he thought it was a pandemic before it actually was a pandemic. President Trump addressed a rally on a Saturday, 9 days after he tested positive for coronavirus. Several health experts told NPR that based on what Trump's doctors have said, Trump's coronavirus experience, he likely was no longer contagious. Listening to Trump is his own emotional roller coaster. Biden was elected to be the 46th president of the United States alongside the first Black vice president, Ms. Kamala Harris, who's an HBCU grad and an AKA. The presidential election set shocking emotions and a sense of pride and excitement that elevated anticipation across the world. The emotions of the uncertainty, the emotions of tragic deaths, the emotions of injustice for just being Black, all paused at that moment the night Biden-Harris was elected. This was the moment of possibility. The possibility of a better way. The possibility of a better way became reality. The anticipation of the possibility of better also came in December when the first person received the vaccine for COVID-19. See, even though we all have gone through this emotional roller coaster together, some ended the roller coaster ride sooner than others, we can all say there is a chance for a better day. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been our absolute pleasure to serve you today. As we prepare to end the journey of the emotional roller coaster we all call the long spring break and hidden gems, please make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened and your mask is on tight. We hope that you enjoyed remembering this long spring break and hidden gems blast from the past, the ups and downs. But I want you to know that a better day is here and now. We can all embrace the hidden gems and we can all either embrace the hidden gems or continue the uncertainty by not learning and growing. Thanks for sharing this moment with us. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for our group?
Well done.
Thank you.
So obviously 2020 made a big impact on everyone. How do you think that changed a lot in your life personally?
I would say that yes, it did. It changed a lot of my plans. I had a lot of plans for the summer of last year, whether it was trips or it was concerts or things like that, and they were all either postponed or canceled. So I would say it definitely took away a lot of my enthusiasm for the end of the year. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, this concludes our presentation today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting. I hope you got some hidden gems out of the long spring break. It was awesome. You guys did a great job. Take a bow. You did great. Yay. I'm so proud of them today. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Thank you again. You don't have to do this.